Hey there, this is Jonah with Gray Area. Welcome to our series Spotlight, where our mission is to build a bigger and more united house music community by sharing new and exciting artists, festivals, and event brands with you. In this interview, you'll hear from Max Chapman, label head of Resonance Records and a master DJ and producer. Be sure to like this video and subscribe for more interviews like this. We'll just get into it. What we're doing here, just, give you a little background, obviously, trying to profile you, your career, showcase you to kind of our audience, which is a little more North American leaning. And then, I think something else that just happens in these conversations is, we're also having a bit of a discussion on just kind of like the scene in Europe and, what's different there, and, also kind of contrasting it with the scene in the US. So felt like you were a great candidate for this. And obviously, you've been putting out great stuff for a while. One of the ways that I just like to start off in general is just having you tell our listeners where you're from and what the scene was like for you growing up.
The scene growing up as in life?
Like house music, if there was any where you grew up, what your experience with it was.
So I'm Max Chapman. I'm born and raised in Essex on the east coast of the UK, southeast coast. Basically been a beach boy my whole life. I've lived right up on the beach with absolutely no music scene. So the way I first got into music was I was about... I'd say about 13, and I just wanted to be able to mix, basically, but I didn't know what I wanted to mix. I just liked the idea of DJing, and so I was buying these records, any old records. I worked in a fish and chip shop when I was like 13 illegally, saving up all my washing up money, my pot wash money, and I bought these decks and learnt to mix, but I soon got bored, and I think that's because I didn't know what kind of music I liked, and they just got pushed under the bed for a little while. And then about sort of 5 years later, I started to like, I suppose it was more electro, but there was still nothing around. And the reason I got into that was because I went around my friend Dave's house once, and he was making music at his house, and I just couldn't believe he was making music in his house. I didn't think that was possible. So that intrigued me. So I was like, right, what have you got here? What is this stuff? And he gave me a list of what the stuff was, and I went and bought it. In fact, these are the speakers that I've got in my kitchen that I bought then.
Wow.
Yamaha HS8s. I'll spin that back around.
Still slap, still go hard.
No, they haven't. To be honest, they haven't been used that much. But I have upgraded the cones because I've wellied them a little bit. But yeah, so he gave me a list of everything, and I went and bought it. I bought a laptop, I bought a MIDI keyboard, speakers, that kind of thing, and I just started making music. And a couple of years later, I actually slacked a bit with it because I still didn't know where to go, and then I went traveling to Southeast Asia and Australia, and I took my laptop, and when I traveled, that's where I realized that I started to like house music, and that was what I ended up making. And then I started playing a few gigs in Australia, and then I came home and DJ'd in a little bar right on the beach until I basically got signed and started getting some bigger ones. So unfortunately, it's a rubbish story with a rubbish background.
No, man, that's great. That's great. Everyone has this like different beginning, right? And like, I think it's been funny because with a lot of the people that I talk to, I feel like it often goes one of two ways. They're either, and a lot of the guys I have been interviewing are from the UK. So there's some comparisons here, and people seem to either have lived near or in one of these big cities with a scene, or they had absolutely nothing. And it was just like a buddy, who showed them what's up. But as you mentioned, you know, you got off to Australia first. Do you have a memory of like the first time that you really DJ'd to a club or a party?
Well, I remember the first time that I really thought to myself, well, I love it. This is the music I want to do. And I just had the best night of my life. And it was art department on a boat in Sydney Harbour.
Ooh.
And it was their tune Without You hadn't been out that long. And I listened to them, and I actually ended up, funnily enough, I was getting in a cab, an art department was sat on a curb and their driver hadn't turned up. So I said, you can jump in here if you want. And I gave them to a lift, and they said, come in the after party. And I spent all night with them. But I think that was what gave me the inspiration to go and do it. And then I had like 4 or 5 gigs the whole time I was in Australia. And I'm sure they were pretty crap performances, because I didn't really know what I was doing. I couldn't flow then. Do you know what I mean? Couldn't read a crowd. But I learned that when I got home. Even though it was only a bar, you still learn these things that, you know, and you gain experience. So yeah, but yeah, no one in my family's musical at all. So
that's awesome. That's a crazy story, man. Art department, absolute legends. Anyone watching this, definitely go check them out. Like, they've just been doing their thing for a long time. You know, one of the things I think is interesting, like in this world, it's easy to think that, you know, if you're a house or techno DJ, like that's everything for you musically. So I'd just like to ask, you know, are there any artists or genres of music that you listen to kind of in your downtime that you think falls outside that realm?
In fact, I only listen to this. If I'm walking the dog, if I'm driving, if I'm working. I'm currently building a studio at the minute as well, and that's all I've had on it, which is out there. I'm just building this myself. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah, wow.
Brand new studio in the garden. I've been working on that today. And literally all I have in is bicep and a forte and just really electronic, breaky music, and with a lot of emotion and feeling. That's what I love to listen to. Before a set, I will listen to, or coming up maybe on a Friday, if I'm having a beer, I like to find live sets. That's where I like to find music, because you get a real idea of what's going on there. But to be honest, if I could find more artists like Bicep, that's all I would listen to, pretty much.
Nice.
They're like my heroes.
You know, that's great listening to that before. Do you find that like that's ever, you know, obviously, and we'll get into this more, but, you know, I think your musical styles, you know, in a little bit of a different direction. Do you ever find inspiration from those guys in terms of your own music?
Yes, because when I was making tech house, I just, I slowly started to, I suppose, mature and evolve, and realize that my music was soulless and dead, basically. It's like there was just no feeling to it. And now, at the moment, I'm using some melodies, some chords, and I've never been more in love with my own sound. So those elements really needed to come in, some more sort of, I don't know what the word is really, just a lot of more melodic elements, but I try to make them feel a little bit more emotional, whether it's joy or even sometimes a bit of, you know, sometimes a little bit of a different direction, like a little bit of not sadness, but, you know, something that will make you feel like think, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've actually started another alias. I'm not quite sure on the name yet, but it's more along those lines, the bicep-y sort of stuff. But yeah, just adding more musical elements and more feeling to my records has been the big change for me.
Oh, it's fine. I'm glad you brought that up, because I mean, and we'll get into it more, but it is something I noticed, you know, just kind of going through your music. It felt like there were a couple different phases for you, and, you know, especially recently, it seems like, you know, you've been able to kind of do whatever you want in the last year or so. Just like, you know, this is a tech house track, this one's a little deeper. But anyways, we'll get into that. The last question I wanted to ask before I kind of dive into the music side of your career is just, as somebody who's played, you know, all over the world, all types of venues, festivals, if you had to pick a choice on like playing a festival, large kind of scale venue, or an intimate club, what would it be for you?
I would say a large club. I know that wasn't one of the options.
Big venue, that it falls right in. I
I'd
got
say
you.
a large club. I would say like 2 to 2,500 in a club is where I would feel most comfortable.
Is there anyone like when you're answering that question, is there a venue on the mind?
I mean, I love playing in South America, and pretty much every party it sort of fits that category. Lost Beach Club is probably my favourite place to play. You could easily get like sort of 1,500, 2,000 in there when it's full. I've done the first ever boiler room for Ecuador there actually, and that was one of the best nights I've ever had DJing. That was full to the brim, and I think that's where it stems from, to be honest. But I do also like. I mean, it's brilliant to be on a beach in warm temperatures, but I also like a dark, dingy, warehousey space in usually a cold place like the UK. So as long as it's indoors, as long as it's got a huge sound system, and it's dark and there's lights, I'm so happy.
Yeah. Oh man, those are some of the best nights. Well, I'm glad you mentioned Lost Beach because it's something I wanted to get into later, but I'll just ask you about it now. And it's funny. I wasn't really aware of it as a place or even that tuned in to kind of the scene in South America. And I was actually talking to Josh Butler last week, and he was mentioning, he's like, Lost Beach, Ecuador, my favorite venue in the world. And,
oh, really?
Going through your stuff, obviously saw like you did this boiler room set. So I was just curious, like, how did that come about? How did you end up doing that?
I just got booked at Lost Beach, but it just so happened it was going to be the first ever boiler room in Ecuador, and obviously the first ever boiler room at Lost Beach Club. So literally people travelled from not just Ecuador, like everywhere in your surrounding areas in South America to come to this place. I couldn't believe it. Because Montanita is quite a small, I wouldn't be able to tell you the population, but it is tiny, the place where the club is. It's so small. It's a little surfer town in Ecuador, and it's tiny. But the people come from Guayaquil, which is like about 2.5 hours, 3 hours drive, and beyond, because that's like the closest city. It's like a 2.5 hour, 3 hour drive of just like a single windy road. And these people travel it non-stop. I don't even know where they sleep because there's not enough accommodation. If they sleep.
Yeah, I guess you play a long enough set, they don't have to, right?
Yeah, hopefully they're promoting safe driving after.
Well, I wanted to, go back to kind of some of the earlier days. Obviously, as you mentioned, you felt like your style and kind of skill has, of course, progressed and gotten better over time. But, some of your earlier music, all the way back to like the Rhythm Stick, the Lost EP, Hotcakes, kind of like 2011 to 2012, it was definitely a little on the deeper, more hypnotic style. You mentioned like Bicep and Art Department and those guys. Is that who you were drawing inspiration from at the time?
My inspiration for instance, Hotcakes was definitely, what did they used to call themselves? Hot Natured.
Okay.
Like Forward Motion and that sort of era. But they were very sort of connected at the time. Art Department, Jamie Jones, Lee Foss, they were all sort of connected at that time. And I'm not really sure where that style came, because I had a style at first, which I think made me stand out. That's what I thought it was. And it was I would create a very simple bass line, but then I'd slap it up an octave quite a lot in between, like the bass line on Don't Go, like the bass line on Rhythm Stick. So that was what I started to do. And I suppose I eventually got bored of doing that, or maybe I got inspired by something else. But it was a very, very fun time making music around that time. But now I listen back and it's awful. But we all have to start somewhere.
Yeah. Definitely. You know, the one of the next ones you put out was the Jack and the Beans, and
Yeah.
you dropped it on Resonance, which, if I'm not mistaken, is your own label, right?
Yeah.
And I thought it was interesting
Wow,
because
you've
obviously,
been doing your research, man.
oh, we got it, man. That's how we do it here. We like to go back from the start.
Yeah.
You know, I just thought for someone who is, you know, objectively like more at the beginning of your career to just start a label, you know, what was the thought process behind that?
Matt, I've always been this kind of person. If I get an idea, I'll just do it. And if it fails, it fails. But I like to have a go at things I want to do. And so many people told me not to do that. Most of the other DJs were like, you can't start a label. You've only been, I mean, I think I started that label about 6 months after my first release.
Yeah.
Like, and I was just like, you know, I want to start a label. To be honest, it's probably a little bit more common now to do that. A lot of people want that head start. And with that platform, you can, you know, if you've got a little bit of backing behind you or a bit of money behind you, then just having that label enables you to be able to not only release, but then use promo pools and promo companies and, you know, distribution and DJs are receiving your promos. They're then playing it out. Radio DJs are getting them just for a couple of 100-300 quid a release. So it is a good way to expose yourself in the early stages. Back then, that wasn't the case. I just started it because I fancied it. I didn't even know about sending promo out to artists for about a year. I was just releasing stuff for the fun of it.
Hey, that's good, man. I mean, you get started early. It's funny because I feel like now, like obviously you've had years and years now to build on it and improve it. You know, one of the next kind of things I wanted to touch on was just, I wanted to ask you about Left Wing and Cody. I think that they're, you know, I think they're one of these duos who like have been around for a really long time and have just like put out so much music, but for whatever reason, like maybe fly under the radar a little, at least in the US. You know, you've collaborated with them early on. Recently, you've released music with their label. I was just wondering, you know, what that relationship was like and how you met them.
Yeah, I mean, when I first started making music, if I remember rightly, in 2010-ish, they had just come out of making progressive stuff and gone into more of a garagey sort of era. And they stayed in that and then I sort of joined them on that because I have quite a big garage background, especially from where I'm from. Essex, London area it's a huge part of our culture here. Garage, we just can't help but like garage. Yeah, when I used to make music and send it to them, and they turned me down plenty of times. But ever since we started talking, we've been really good mates. We play Call of Duty together every day.
Wow.
Like literally, we still talk to each other all the time. They've gone on a different path now. I mean, they've both got kids. They've been touring for a very long time, a very long time. John is an extremely talented producer and mastering engineer. And Chris, just as much a producer, but he's very... he's also got such a good business side of things. He can run the labels with his eyes closed, and they were a really great duo. But I think with the kids and stuff now and touring for so long, I think they've now gone, they've gone down a different route. They're making, but the route they're going down now is really hitting off. They're making some big waves in some more of the commercial side of house. So I'm making some pretty good money, I believe. So, hats off to them for that.
Nice. That's awesome. I think as you mentioned, like you have this progression and, maybe you don't look at it like this, but I felt like going through all your music, it felt like a kind of next phase of your career maybe started around like 2015, 2016. You put out a bunch of music then. Like I thought, the Impact EP and Danger was really awesome. And then you dropped Get Freaky in 2016 on Elro Music. And, if it seemed like your music was getting a little more complex, kind of picking up the pace a little, more synths, going a little deeper onto that 4 on the floor sound. As I think you said, you shifted a little more into the tech house world. Was there kind of anything new influencing you at this time, or like what kind of pushed you in that direction?
I think around that time, it was more about what was going on when I was out DJing myself. It was more about what I was hearing. I actually think that it was probably one of the worst times for music in a club. like when I go back now and listen to that kind of music, I just think, oh God, I don't know. It just seems really boring to me and soulless. But at the time, I remember I used to love it. I used to absolutely love it. And so did everyone else on the dance floor. And I suppose it's just a phase. But personally, for me, that tech house phase is probably my most disliked, I would say. But as I said, at the time, I loved it. I think the real change for me was when I first started properly going to Ibiza, going to Amnesia was the club that really changed me, and that's where I got the idea for La Fiesta. I heard like a South American or Spanish vocal being played over like a tech housey tune at Music On, and I thought, I'm going to go and make something like that. And I went and made La Fiesta in like 3 hours, and Jamie Jones signed it to Hotcakes. And I think since then, I took a little bit more time on my music. I tried to be a bit more focused in on production rather than just and quality rather than just slamming out loads of quantity, basically.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. I mean, it's like you started hitting on these labels, and I think, in 1 year and a year and a half, you're releasing with like Tool Room, Hot Creations, Revealed. I'm glad you brought up La Fiesta, because I wanted to ask you about it. Like, I think it's one of your most known songs.
Yeah, I think it
personally, I'm just a huge fan of that sound, like kind of anything that has a Latin vibe to it. I'm all over it. As you mentioned, Amnesia, Ibiza, for our audience, which, the North American listeners, I think Ibiza is like the one place that everyone knows about, but I don't think people necessarily understand kind of what's so special about it. And so I'm wondering, can you just tell us?
It's so strange. I don't know what it is. It starts with the air that you breathe in when you walk off the plane, and then that's it. you breathe that little bit of air in when you get on the bus to the airport. You get through the airport, you come out, and it's just like it's a different heat. There is. I know it sounds cliche, but there's definitely something about that place, man. Definitely, when you feel the music and you feel the just the moment so much better than you would in another club in another place. It's very strange, but it definitely has something. They say it's Esvedra. I'm not convinced, but
oh boy, no. I mean, the way you phrase it is how I think a lot of people who I ask about it say that, and it really is one of these places that I think, like, until you go yourself, it's hard to really understand like what's so awesome about it. I know, like for me at least, like getting off the plane and I'm just like, oh, the billboards are advertising Carl Cox and Jamie Jones. I was like, this is a place that I want to be at. When did you kind of first start playing there? And do you have, I know you mentioned Amnesia, but do you remember like kind of who you were watching that was influencing you?
Yeah, definitely. So, when I released Don't Go, which was my first ever release, I was where was I? I went to Park Life in Manchester, and I'd written those tracks. I'd written Don't Go, I think it was Lost, a couple of other tracks, can't remember what's on the EP now. And I went to Sankey's and I lost the CD. That I had a load of CDs and I lost them. And I went to the after party at Sankey's, and this guy found them who owned the electronic label it come out on. He put them on. My phone number was on it. He rang me, said he'd sign all of them. And he used to do parties at Sankey's, which is like one of the best clubs in the UK. 2 weeks later, Pete Tong played it on Radio 1. And then 2 weeks after that, my first ever gig in a club, that wasn't like a shit bar. I was in the main room at Sankey's. And then that was it. My career actually started in Manchester. I was playing in Manchester every month. And then I slowly crept into London and it went from there. I did actually, I've forgotten what you said, what the question was, and I was going to lead on to it from that.
Oh, no, I was just saying, like, once, you start kind of getting established and you're getting these shows, but then as you mentioned, like you're in Ibiza,
that's right, I remember.
You're hearing this sound.
Yeah. So I got that gig at Sankey's and I started playing at Sankey's often and in Manchester often. And then obviously Sankey's, which is now Octane, was in Ibiza. So Nick Yates, I met Nick through playing in Manchester, who runs Paradise and Circle Loco and stuff like that. And he's just launched a really cool brand called Unknown ID, which is like a music platform for sort of unreleased music. You can only get there, sort of limited edition stuff. And anyway, him and Lee just started putting me on lineups at Sankey's in Ibiza. And then that sort of crept me into there as well. So I actually have quite a lot of thanks to give to them two boys, because they kind of helped me push on now. And Nick's the person that still books me at DC10 for Paradise, and along with Jamie's stamp of approval. But he still does a lot for me, so I've got a lot to thank for that. And that's probably where, without them boys, and especially without my manager Lee helping me on the, when I finally got somewhere, helping me progress. If it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be anyone really. I mean, there's only so much you can do on your own making music. Yeah. You need a team behind you,
No, definitely. I think it's something that's like easy from a fan perspective to like not understand, how much work goes in. Like you can make the most amazing track, but when you're just sending out music to like demo emails, they're getting thousands of submissions. It's so hard to get discovered. I'm just curious. I got to ask, do you have a favorite city to play in the UK?
In the UK, Manchester, 100%.
Hands down. 100%. What is it about there?
I love Manchester. If I wasn't a boy that wanted to be by the sea, Manchester would be my next stop, 100%.
Do you have a favorite football club?
I support West Ham.
Great season.
They've actually had a good season, but I used to support. I think the last time I watched them was like for a full season. Harry Redknapp was there, and when I used to love Harry Redknapp, and that's years ago, 15, 16, 17 years ago, and I just went and started playing rugby because I thought these guys are tarts. You can blow at them and they fall over.
Yeah, man, it's a little crazy these days. Like I've been watching, I've been tuned in on like the last couple of rounds of the Champions League, and like some of like the team, they're so skilled, but like you watch Neymar just go flying like every 3 minutes. And I'm just like, come on, man.
He's the worst. They should deduct him half his wages every time he does that. He's definitely not.
It sucks. He's so talented.
It should be a more of a serious penalty to dive. It's just It's cheating.
Yeah. No, I definitely. So, as you kind of mentioned, like you feel personally like recently your sound is finally in a place that you want it to be. I felt like listening to kind of the last year and a half of your releases, or like a lot of stuff in 2020. It was interesting because whether it was like the Formanto or Gibby with Hot Tracks, Love Control, the Dusk EP, I felt like you're really kind of showcasing your versatility as a producer. And so I'm wondering, for you, what it's been like in the last kind of 2 years. And, now that you're obviously a little more established, do you feel like I can just go in here and make whatever I want?
I think... I think a lot of that is to do with it's not just trying to showcase versatility. It's like, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what direction to go in. But I actually sort of found a new love for making music while doing that. You can hear in my Dusky EP, for example, you can hear like there's quite a lot of emotion in that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that I love making that, because I used a Roland 303 for the main lead, and just like, it's such a raw, clubby sound when you hear it on its own. And I just had the 303 on random. So what I'd done was I put the 303 on random, pressed record, recorded like 8 or 16 bars of it, stopped it, chucked it through Melodyne to see what key it was, moved it around so it was all perfect, and then I wrote over it. But it's mad how you can take such a raw, clubby sounding machine, add some other elements of some more synths, for instance, and it just adds so much emotion when you start putting those together. And I just love doing it, man. That's all I want to do, is just have, in my new studio, I'm just going to have all my synths set up and I'm just going to jam properly. I've never been able to do that. I've never been able to have everything set up, sort of midied up and timed, and it just basically set up properly. Through lack of knowledge for it, really. I've tried so many times, but I just want to play as if when I make music, I want to do it as if I'm playing live, and really feel that emotion.
Absolutely. Is that something that you think, like, going forward, would you ever want to have a live
100%? Yeah, I really would. The only thing that worries me is I don't want to do it on my own. It's really tough to do it on your own. I would love to be able to find somebody that had a similar sort of love for that kind of music, but also we'd have to be kind of in tune and have a similar sort of background, a similar sort of way of looking at these things, because sometimes you can tread on each other's toes. But I would really like to do it with someone else. I don't personally like the travel with touring and stuff. I love getting there. I love, chilling out on a beach or waiting for my gig or being at the gig, but I don't like the bit on my own in between, So it'd be nicer if I'm going to do a new project with a lot more experience, which I think will actually end up being, hopefully, it's my dream to do it. So it would hopefully be a bigger project than what I have now. But I would like to share it with someone. It would be nice.
Yeah, definitely. I'm curious, just now that you're almost a decade into having your own label.
Exactly. Yeah.
How do you decide on when you're releasing your own music, whether you want to put it out yourself or go somewhere else?
Personally, I like to put it on my own label because, number one, it gets my label out there. And number two, quite often I find that people don't work as hard as if it's you doing it, if you know what I mean. A lot of the time I've released stuff. I mean, there's certain labels, I won't mention any names, but I've had like huge records and they've done nothing because they just didn't promote them properly or get behind them. And at least I know it's up to me. And if that doesn't happen, then it's only myself to blame. And I mean, it just helps the label grow at the end of the day. We've just actually had 3 back-to-back number ones on Beatport in 3 releases. I'm hoping we've got, myself and George Schmeddles have got one out on Friday, and if we can manage to get that one, then it's 4 in a row.
That would be amazing, man.
That one's called Together, so go and buy it.
Together. Wow. Oh, that's great. I'm looking forward to hear that. We'll make sure to plug it. I think we're going to put this interview out next week, so we'll make sure to put that in all the socials, man.
Yeah, Beatport is the exclusive for the club mix.
Oh yeah. As I just want to finish up here, you mentioned that single. I think release wise, it's been a little quiet for you this year. Obviously now we know, you're building out the studio. What's 2021 look like for you?
Do you know, it's not just my studio that the last 2 years I've actually built this house from scratch.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's been the toughest time of my life. Like, I literally started building this house in when was it? It's about 2 years ago. About 2 years ago, and basically I was like 6 months in. No, it's a bit less than 2 years. About 18 months ago, I was about 6 months in, and then the pandemic happened, and I had no income. Oh, it's been the bane of my life, this bloody place. But it's finished now, and I've just got to get. This is my last hurdle out there, the studio, and then once that's done, I haven't got to work on anything. I haven't got to tile anything. I haven't got to do anything. I can just make music, and that's it. I mean, I've been having to go to the studio in the evening, sort of ticking off chores that I need to do, or snags, or things for the house. But I'm just so excited to get everything done and just not have to do any of that anymore. So especially with working as well, because I've had to, at one point I was actually working for Woodland Studios, engineering for people, doing a lot of masterclasses. And I've even, got on the tools a few times at home here, because it's been seriously tough times. So to be able to stop doing that, not having to focus on this house anymore, and just have all of my focus and no worries, just all music, is going to be amazing. And I think it's probably going to have a huge effect on my career, I hope.
Awesome. Well, I'm really looking forward to seeing the fruits of that labor, man. And congratulations on the house. Hopefully, any plans to come to the States anytime soon?
Yes. So unfortunately, my visa run out in September. Funnily enough, John from Left Wing Cody's just WhatsApped me. So September, October, I believe, is when I'm going to be hopefully coming out. My visa ran out in September 2020, unfortunately, and we couldn't get any sort of. We tried to get that time made back up when we came out of the pandemic, but unfortunately, I don't think there's anything in place for that. So we've had to start from scratch, rebuy the visa, which has cost, as you know, costs thousands. So that's another load of money I've had to find. But yeah, we've done it. It's all in motion. It's paid for, and we're just literally waiting to get it back now. But there is a bit of a queue for like a bit of an admin queue. So as soon as that's over, we're going straight to the States, and I'm going to stay there for a long time. I'm hopefully going to do like a sort of 4 to 6 week tour I'd like to do. I'd like to get as much as possible. It's been so long, and it's one of my favourite places to play. Number one, but it's always nice to go somewhere where everybody speaks English. Number two, it's just such a vast country full of so many different landscapes. I love it so much. I actually spent my 30th birthday driving around California in a camper for 2 weeks. I love it. I just can't wait to get back. Every single coast I love, north, south, just everything.
That's awesome, man. No, it's really great. Like and I think each city has a unique vibe, and then obviously, the nature piece of it is really special. I'm in New York, so hopefully we'll see you here soon. That's all I got for you, man, but really appreciate the time. And
wicked, man. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.
And hopefully we'll be able to meet up in New York very soon.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it, man.
Wicked, man.
All right. You have a good one.
Cheers, bro. Thanks, brother.
Thanks.